Hey, it's Tony Sweet and Captain Ron. We're here with Truth Be Told, the one and only place to go for the truth. We try to get the truth from our expert and authors from all over the world and bring you the topics that we know you want to know about. And we have a great guest for you. This is one of those, those big ones.
This is it.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is one of those top ones that you just, strive to talk to because they've done so much work and in guiding us to what we do. And we have Whitley Strieber on the show. He is an author of over 30 best-selling books, including Communion. His latest book is The Afterlife Revolution. He has maintained a dual career as an author of fiction and an advocate of paranormal concepts through his best-selling nonfiction books, his Unknown Country website, and his internet podcast, Dreamland. That's awesome. And it's a great honor to welcome to Truth Be Told, the one and only. Well, you say it because you're the.
I'm the big fan.
You're the fan girl.
Whitley Strieber, it's such a great honor to have you back on the show. Welcome back, buddy.
Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Well, we're going to jump right in, so we're getting a late start here. Tony's been kind enough to turn it over to me for a minute because I've got a couple of prepared questions here, and we're going to jump right in with the hard stuff. Not going to dance around it. It's been a fascinating year for Tony and I. We've really been discussing a lot of the big questions lately. Are we alone in the universe? What happens when we die? And it feels like we're circling the drain on the answers for this, but we're still way the hell out there. So we want to, start getting closer. And it seems to me like you, I guess actually Annie, you could say, has actually moved the extraterrestrial experience from a nuts and bolts spaceship with, aliens flying across the galaxy to perhaps these are more of a spirit guide presence, perhaps guiding us into the afterlife. There seems to be some connection with death. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there is. She started out with this not having any real belief in the nuts and bolts. I guess it just didn't interest Anne very much. She had an absolutely amazing instinct for all of this stuff. Right when we first started to get letters after Communion, first of all, she's the one who came up with the title Communion. It scared me so badly. What happened to me, I wanted to call the book Body Terror. And she said, no, it's not about that. This isn't a horror novel. It's about a new kind of experience of being alive, and you should call it Communion. Or words to that effect. She actually was just sort of drifting off to sleep when she came up with the title. And that title has become sort of the theme of my life, which is how to make this into something real. And the letters started to pour in. And I mean, there were tens of thousands of letters. And one day she walks out of her office and she says, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death.
Even that phrasing is great, what we call death.
You're right, exactly. She started out at a higher level of understanding of this than most people, including me. It was like she was just ready to do it. She fit right into her place in it and became the leader. But the UFO community in those days was just all men. So no one wanted Anne's input. These were all old-fashioned guys from the 50s. Some woman talking. What? Is that insane? I mean, that's right. Sort of their attitude. And she did not like that because she was a tremendously powerful intellect, and she knew it damn well. And she had better ideas than any of them and than me. And I knew that. So I had no problem with that. And I began to listen to what Anne had to say. But she had more than that. She would be reading through the letters and she'd put one aside and she'd say, get in touch with so-and-so. They're going to I want to bring them up to the cabin. And, we would have these things. And I met Laurie Barnes O'Brien that way. I met Raven Dana that way. I connected with a lot of different people that way because she just said that they should come. And when they did come, they had experiences at the cabin. But these weren't just sort of alien contact at all. Give you an example. Lori Barnes here's how she and Ann met. Ann was sitting there with these piles of letters. I could not read as fast as she read, but she could read so quickly. She was keeping up with them fairly well. And she said, I need a secretary. And I said, well, let's call Manpower. And she said, no, I'll find one in these letters. 2 minutes later, she says, I've got a secretary. And she shows me the letter, and it's from this lady. And she goes into all this stuff about all of her contact experiences, which were phenomenal. And I say, it says here she's a singer and an actress. He says, have you ever heard of her? I said, no, I haven't. She said, well, look at the handwriting. That's the handwriting of a professional. So she calls her up, and she turns out to live next door to us in Manhattan. So she's over at the house in 15 minutes, 10 minutes. And it begins a 15-year relationship between the three of us.
That's great.
With Lori doing enormous amounts of typing. And all of the letters that Ann and Lori organized are now archived at Rice University and considered the most extraordinary archive of its kind in the world.
There's like 30,000 letters, right?
Well, I don't know how many, actually. I don't think it's a full 30,000 there, but it's a lot.
Wow.
She kept the ones with long, complex stories, basically. Gotcha. She didn't keep them all because there were a lot of letters. There were 2 or 3 lines. This happened to me, or this was a fascinating book, or you scared the hell out of me, that kind of thing. But Annie had said that before we started organizing things. She knew that it had something to do with death. But then when Lori came up to the cabin, and Anne she had it all organized. She even knew who would see their beings and everything. And we had a low light camera on on the hallway between the bedrooms downstairs. Ann and I were upstairs. There were 2 bedrooms downstairs. The filmmaker and his wife were on the convertible couch in the living room. Raven Dana was in one bedroom, and Lori and another lady whose name escapes me, sadly enough, were in the next bedroom. So in the middle of the night, excuse me. I want to roll back because I wanted to start with what happened with Lori first. Lori came in the afternoon with this bewildered expression on her face from a walk in the road near the cabin. And she says, I just had something incredible happen. I saw my brother on the road. I talked to my brother. And the reason this was so incredible to her was that her brother had disappeared from the face of the earth 20 years before. Wow. And been given up as dead by the FBI. So she was just, flabbergasted. She said, I said to him, come down to the house and meet my friends. And he just smiled and drifted off into the woods and disappeared before my eyes. And she was just, and so Anne takes me aside and she says, the visitors will be here physically tonight. Let's be sure we've got that camera. So, sure enough, and we said nothing to anyone else about it, of course, except, we talked to Lori about her experience. But you see, Anne understood the connection already. She understood it from the letters. So, sure enough, that night, the following thing happens. Raven Dana is waked up by someone punching her on the shoulder. She opens her eyes and she sees, or I believe that's how she was waked up. Anyway, she sees what she thinks is a raccoon on the foot of the bed. And then she realizes, well, wait a minute, there's an alarm system in this house. Whitley's got all the windows are screwed shut, the screens. In other words, the house was like a tomb. It was a very tightly locked at night, as you can imagine it would have been. So then she realizes, wait a minute, it's one of those beings. And it's sitting right there. And she reaches out her hand, and it reaches its hand out, and they touch hands. They touch hands. It's practically the only incident of that is really documentable in any serious way in the whole world. And she said she knew something. I've touched them before, but I never talked about this with anyone in those days, how it felt, that there's this energy that comes out of them, that you feel this pulsating it's a very pleasant sensation. It's like electricity, but if they become concerned about you, they up the amperage, and you can't move once they do that. But anyway, they weren't concerned about her. So it asks her in her head, what do you want me to do? She says, you could walk down that hall.
To be on camera.
Right, where it would be on camera, so we thought. So it goes down the hall and proceeds to wake up Laurie Barnes and the other lady. And they have a brief exchange similar to the one that Raven did, where Laurie also says, we'll go in the hall. Then it disappears. Then the next thing we know, Drew Cummings, the filmmaker who is doing a documentary, is waked up in bed by this being looking at him over the edge of the bed, over the convertible couch, beside the convertible couch. And he looks up and he sees this little man with this huge head and these big black eyes, and it scares the living daylights out of him, of course.
Sure.
Because he's here from Hollywood, making a documentary about a professional bullshit artist. And so suddenly this happens. And as soon as he gets scared, it turns into the head of a hawk before his eyes, or a falcon. And then it proceeds to disappear. Wow. And he and his wife, of course, are startled out of their minds. And about half an hour later, this is closing in on dawn, my son and I, who have been sleeping in the woods, down in the woods, because the house was so crowded, walk up. I couldn't let him camp out by himself, and his bedroom was being used by Laurie, so that's why I was with him, and Ann was still upstairs in our bedroom. So I would come up, and as we walk up to the house, we cross a little hill. There's the deck and the swimming pool and the house, the front porch of the house. You can see straight down the porch. And suddenly, this little hooded figure comes out of the door without opening the door, runs down the porch, runs across the deck, runs across the backyard, and goes shooting off into the woods. And it's not solid. It's like translucent. And it shoots off, avoiding the trees in the woods. And, we see this and we're just amazed. We go inside. Drew Cummings and his wife are on their feet because they had an experience of a tremendous burst of heat, so intense that they thought the bed had caught on fire right before it left. Now, that's the kind of thing that used to happen at the cabin. And it's why I get so mad sometimes when people, like there's these people out there, he's not telling the truth, because in 1986 or 87, he said this about one of his experiences, and then in 2014, he said it a different way.
Right.
So therefore, it can't be the truth. But what they do, first of all, memory is not crystal. It is malleable, and your memories do change over time. It's perfectly normal. Number one. Number two, they never mention the existence of all of these named witnesses who have come forward many times. Like Raven Dane, I was with her about 6 months ago, and I asked her, I said, Raven, how do you feel about it now? And she said, well, Whitley, I have two experiences in my life that are absolutely unforgettable to me. One is when at the age of 14 years old, I walked into my mother's bedroom and found her dead. Oof. And the other is when I opened my eyes and realized that being was sitting on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah, how do you forget that? I mean, boy.
Yeah, you can't.
And you get things like that. And then you see all of this debunking and suspicion being always the craziest thing. And the one thing that never comes forward is the existence of the witnesses. That they won't talk about. This is a very sick world. It's weird.
Yeah.
I think I'm not so surprised that the visitors seem so weird to us, because I think they might be pretty normal and we're weird. I think it's maybe the opposite.
Yeah, I mean they certainly know more than us. Well, let me ask you this next one here. A very interesting thing that I've heard you say that I have not heard from other people in this community is that you seem to say that the visitors and people who have passed away and crossed over can see this glow when you do this meditative state, like from the Gerdoff
Sensing
Foundation.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sensing exercise is very simple. You can find it in zillions of meditation books and different variations of it and so forth. And it's extremely not hard to do. I learned it in the Gurdjieff Foundation in 1970. He was an Armenian mystic who founded this organization, and Ann and I kind of happened on a book called In Search of the Miraculous by a disciple of his, P.D. Uspensky. And it was a really rigorous intellectual journey into how to be more awake to reality. And we found out the foundation existed, and we joined it. It was not like a cult or anything. It's nothing like Scientology at all. Let me put it that way. Or religion. I mean, you know, people stay in their religions when they join the work. They don't, if they have one, they don't, or if they're atheists or anything, it just doesn't matter. It's a methodology, not a religion or a cult. So I began using this method, which is the sensing exercise, where you take your attention and you move it onto various parts of your body, or methodically, one leg and then the other, and the arms and the rest of the body. And then you let your attention stay with physical sensation. And your mind will take you back to your thoughts again and again. But when you do this, the attention, we think of our attention as just being sort of part of us. But the fact that we have an attention that can be moved, in other words, I can control my attention, is unique on planet Earth. No other creature can do this, not even the cetaceans, no one. And this is what is the real interest the visitors have in us, because we can do this. When you put your attention on your body's nervous system, it alters the energy output of it very subtly. And they can see that in other levels of reality. That's why they got interested in me in the first place.
Wow. So now, if this is a vibrational thing you're saying, this could be taken as evidence of the phenomenon. And then you call that another level of reality. Perhaps we've tapped in a way to activate this. So theoretically, then anybody could do this, right?
Absolutely anybody can do it. And, you know, it takes time. I've been doing it for 15 years nightly before they showed up in my life. And they didn't show up until I no longer was involved in the Gurdjieff Foundation, because they wished to take the role of teacher in my life. And when I had no teachers anymore, they came. If I'd stayed in the foundation, they never would have showed up. But they did show up.
Wow.
And the first experiences between October and December of '85 were initiatory, and they were very hard. By initiatory, I mean it's something that completely blows up your whole understanding of what the world is.
Sure.
And usually in shamanic traditions and in ancient Greece and places like that, initiatory work meant confrontation with death. And in the shamanic traditions and in the Native American, a lot of the Native American traditions, that was serious business. If you wanted to be a medicine man in many tribes, you took an initiation that could kill you.
Right.
And if it did kill you, then, well, too bad, you were wrong. You weren't supposed to do this.
Wow. I feel go ahead.
So serious, but you see how it's connected to death. And because death isn't real. Death is a transformation of consciousness out of the physical form and into another level.
That's what we've been learning this year. Tony and I keep hearing that repeated from various subjects.
Yeah, because we're going toward a place on this planet where things are going to get really screwed up. I mean, the planet is in trouble, and it's fine. It's part of the evolution of the planet and of us. And a lot of us are going to be transitioning out of this level.
Wow.
And that's why all of this we're all beginning to talk to each other, to sort of self-teach and prepare or this time of crisis that is on the way.
And I think you can feel it. I mean, if you're real, and I was going to ask you, was she an intuitive? Because she sounds like she was very intuitive.
She would have laughed in your face if you'd asked her that question.
Really? I do that all the time.
So true. She was so intuitive. If Annie had a different personality, she would have been an enormously powerful psychic.
That's what when you were talking, I mean, it sounded, because I work with a lot of psychics and on this show and even other shows on my network, and I just, when you're talking, I'm like, this amazing woman must have been a very strong psychic.
I'm looking up at a picture of her right now, and below there's a picture of Annie, a very beautiful contemplative picture of Annie, and immediately below it there is the original art of the communion face.
Oh,
and I consider
his
them
other wife, yeah,
like the women in my life.
Right.
And, I mean, to me, this is my experience of this is that it is a profoundly feminine energy that is emerging. And in fact, as we leave Pisces and move into Aquarius, of course, that will happen. It is supposed to happen. It will happen. It is happening. But that aside, after Annie passed away, she went about reconnecting with me in a most extraordinary way. What kept happening was about an hour and a half after the first thing that happened, after she died, I was sitting in the living room thinking, Anne died. Anne is dead. I couldn't believe it. I mean, she was like the center of my mind and my heart and she was everything. I was very much Anne's companion, and Anne was very much the leader of our little team. And nobody knew that, of course, because it looks different in the public eye.
Right.
Because I do the writing.
Right.
And anyway, suddenly the phone rings. And I think, oh no, I don't want to answer a phone call. But I pick it up, and it's a friend, Belle Fuller, friend of Anne's. And she says, Whitley, she's very psychic. I just had this strange thing. Anne's voice said in my mind that I should call you. Is she all right? I said, Belle, she died at 7:15. Belle knew she was sick, of course. I was very worried about her. She was very sick. And I had just been asking Anne if she still existed. So we talked for a while, and a few days passed, the weekend came, and we went out to Palm Springs with my kids to just get out of the house and away from my suffering for a little while and try to be remind myself the outside world still exists. Of course, they go hiking, and I end up sitting on a bench in the woods thinking to myself, Annie, are you still here? Are you here in any way? My cell phone rings. I was in a good cell coverage area, so it was not a miracle that it rang. It just rang. And it's Claire Henry, William Henry's wife, in Nashville. And she says, Whitley, I just had this strange thing happen. Anne's voice said in my head, just as clear as that, call Whitley. So that's a second one. Then Trish and Rob McGregor, who are the authors of Synchro Secrets, had the same thing happen with them. It happened with a friend called Alex Roderoot. And I'm thick, but not that thick. I figured out finally, yeah, you are here, and you know me well enough to know that I'm going to be a dunderhead about it. And so you've done this so that I can't say to myself, Whitley, it's just your imagination. And that began a whole new relationship between me and my wife. That's what Afterlife Revolution is a chronicle of.
Now, these communications you have seem to be very similar, just like you just said, with William Henry having the voice in the head. Various people, like mediums and channels that come on here, have these same experiences. Yeah. That's what it sounds like you're talking about. Do you think these are very similar?
Well, I keep trying not to think of myself as a psychic medium, but I know that I am. And, I don't do readings because it seems so impossible. How can I possibly? You know, what I am is a psychic medium who's so mired down in gut level skepticism that I can't do it, which is fine. I mean, that's just me. But yeah, I am. I mean, and Annie is too, and Annie is just, she was always really powerful. And although she was very similar to me in the way she would react if she was asked if she was a psychic.
Well, you know, I feel very frustrated, Whitley, that we don't know what this is. We don't know if it's angels, demons, spirits, interplanetary. We keep hearing lately interdimensional is a big thing that a lot of these people in the UFO community say it's interdimensional. Or it could, of course, be psychological and just going on in your head, maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That's exactly where I first went when I first had the communion experience.
Mm-hmm.
Until my doctor very sweetly says to me, after he examined my rectum, because, you know, I was hurt, injured down there.
Yep.
And he says, Whitley, you have a rectal tear. And then he pauses and he says very gently, I believe you've been raped. Which was the most horrible moment of my life. I just was awful because it was so humiliating and I couldn't deny the pain. It was there. That's why I asked him to examine me, because I remembered the thing that was called the rectal probe going into my body. And of course, what happened was afterwards, I endured years and years of hardy har. He's the rectal probe man. Here comes Whitley Strieber and his rectal probe. And then they play the X-Files music, the Twilight Zone music. And I come walking out to a crowd of grinning faces. You take your rape onto a stage and everybody's laughing.
Yeah, you say this over and over. I don't remember it that way. Did you really take a lot of abuse from that?
A lot.
Wow.
I remember it very vividly that way. You look too young to remember. How old were you in 1980?
I'm 50. I remember.
Well, yeah, you're just old enough to remember, but I remember a lot of instances like that. And I remember in one case, I think it was on one show where I could hear them being prepped to laugh about it before I even.
See, I think it's even bolder that you come out and admit it. A lot of people would say I was abducted, but they wouldn't share these details.
It took me 30 years to even say the words, I was raped.
Wow.
And I finally got them out. And then I just decided, screw it. You should have said it in the book in the first place.
Right.
Instead of bullshitting about a rectal probe, because you're trying to be polite and trying not to embarrass yourself, and you ended up making yourself into a laughing stock for being raped, and you don't want to live like that. So yeah, I was raped. Yes, I was raped. Oh,
so you're saying that in the book when you said it was a probe or like a mechanical probe, it was not. It was one of these beings.
I know exactly what it is. It was a device that used to be used before we had things like Viagra. There was a type of electrical device that you could buy that would help people with erectile dysfunction. What it does is it is inserted in the rectum, and a mild electrical current goes into the nerves that affect the penis, and the penis will become erect. And that's why in the hypnosis session, you hear me saying very confusedly, I have an erection. Where did that come from? Because, you know, I'm in a little room full of monsters and suddenly I have an erection. Somehow it didn't connect in my mind for some strange reason.
So they were directing this in order to extract sperm from you, obviously.
They did extract.
Yeah, see, that's back to that. We heard that from Jacobs and all of these. That's very common, obviously.
Yeah, well, Ted Jacobs and Bud Hopkins spent a lot of time saying things about me that aren't true, such as, oh, well, he believes in the whole sweetness and light thing. I don't believe in the sweetness and light thing. I believe what happened to me happened. And I can tell the story fairly accurately. I say fairly accurately because when you get traumatized, it screws up your ability to remember things, get PTSD from it, which I had for many years. And
I can't even imagine. It would blow my brain. I wouldn't even be able to speak.
Yeah, I don't know how you.
yeah, you do
live
think
with that.
about blowing your brains out too. That does come across your mind.
Jesus. You know, we've been talking about a lot of this year, and we spoke to Richard Martini and his studies of Michael Newton and past life regression work, and how these guys go up in a soul group, which we keep living new lives and playing different roles. We even had that doctor on, Jeffrey Long, remember, Tony?
I do.
The NDE doc, and he believed that our soul continued as well. Even a couple weeks ago, we had the acclaimed physicist Russell Tarragon, who's now 85, and he said that he is convinced that our consciousness survives death, and he points to communications with his daughter post her
Yes.
passing as why. Very similar to the way Annie has communicated to you.
Yeah. Annie has, among the first things that Anne said was, to us, it looks like you're all intentionally ignoring us.
Like a cartoon. Yeah, right.
Which is so cool. I mean, she said so many great things after life, just like she did before. But afterwards, frankly, some of the most wonderful things I've ever heard anyone say came from my wife.
Do you hear this in your voice, in your ear, or in your head, or how do you hear it?
It's not in your ear. It's somewhere else. But I know it's her. Like last night, she came in and she was with me very intensely all morning. And now I'm doing this, and now I know why she was here. I mean, we were talking back and forth almost like she was in the room.
Wow.
2 hours ago. And the reason is she knew what this interview was going to be about, and she wanted her story told right.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, she's a powerful presence. In fact, there is a psychic, Shirley Black in Canada, who sometimes will see people and in a sort of disembodied state, and she'll draw pictures of them. And she drew a picture of a woman, and she didn't know who it was. And so she has been studied by Dr. Persinger, or the guy with the Canadian scientist who studied OBEs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also been studied by Jeff Kripal. So she sent the picture to Jeff because she said, this happened, and it just feels like something that has something to do with you.
That's your co-author, right?
What? My co-author, yeah.
Yeah.
It took a look at it, didn't recognize it. I mean, Jeff's a college professor. So he sent it on to a mutual friend, Diana Pasulka, the author of American Cosmo. Diana recognized the picture immediately. She said, Jeff, this is Anne Strieber. So they sent the picture to me. And it's not only is it Anne, it's like a photograph of Anne. It's incredible.
Wow.
And so that sort of thing would happen. I've got it framed in my living room. That sort of thing would happen. And but then she would say things like this amazing statement which has redefined my life, these few words. Enlightenment is what happens when there is nothing left of us but love. And that is a life aim worth having. I mean, that's my life now. That's what I try to do. So people, always raging about all these different people, and I've learned to feel compassion for people who I don't like, rather than dislike and hatred.
You're a better man than me.
And I'm working on that now. It's not something you don't learn that in an afternoon.
Yeah.
You have to follow your angers and your hatreds down to their source.
Well, Whitley, I have a question for you. Edgar Mitchell's Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters, short for FREE, or FREE is the short for that, reports that after surveying many contactees, that 80% of them view it as a positive experience in their lives. Recently, at least you now seem pretty happy to have these experiences happen in your life. Would you say that's true, or? Oh
yeah, they're in my life all the time. The last time I saw the visitors physically was about a month ago at my family's house in Texas, where they come a lot. They've come there for years. And the last time I had any kind of auditory encounters with them was about 3 nights ago. I meditate with them at 11 and at 3 every morning. And if I don't do the 3 o'clock meditation, they'll usually let it go maybe for one night. But then the next night, they're going to wake me up. And they do it in all kinds of different ways. They started out the first night. This is right after Annie passed away. It was in September, and she passed away in August, by shocking one of my toes with that grip that I talked about earlier. And I didn't connect the two things. I jumped out of bed. I thought something had gone wrong with the bed. But what in your bed is going to cause it to shock you? The answer is nothing. So I went back to bed eventually. The next night, fingers grabbed my nipple and shake the dickens out of it. I leaped out of that bed. I mean, I was going for my gun. And then I'm in America. I'm in Texas. Of course I have a gun.
Right.
So I'm standing there in the middle of the bedroom in the middle of the night thinking, who the hell did I run through the look? We don't have a very big apartment. I've been broke for years, but that's okay. That's what if you're going to really try to do something like this, people are going to turn their backs on you, and that's fine. Eventually they turn around again.
That's amazing that's happened to him. That kills me.
I'm only used to
anyway,
Ron
I run through the apartment. There's nobody here. And I think, wait a minute, moron. It's the visitors trying to wake you up the same way they used to do back in the 90s when I meditated for probably the better part of a year. You speak of soul groups. There are soul groups. I meditated with 7 people, 7 who indicated they were from between the lives. And I meditated with them every night. And they wanted that 3 o'clock time also. And there's a reason for it. Gets back to the sensing exercise. At that hour, most people are asleep. Most attention is quiet. It looks sort of like when you see, I don't want to go into why I can see this, but and where I am when I see it, but when you see it, it's a very soft glow around the body. And you can see it in that state. You don't need to, you can see it through walls or roofs or anything. But if someone is doing the sensing exercise, they look like a little star. They're very noticeable. So that means that at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're easily found because you'll be the only one that looks like that in a large, even in a big city.
It's like you can call them at will.
Call them at will?
Yeah, by lighting yourself up like that.
Yeah, you can light yourself up.
Yeah.
But whether or not they'll come is another story.
Well, yeah, that's true.
This is not a tourist deal. There are people who go out in places and they sit in lawn chairs and wait for the little flying saucers to show up, and they do. They come. They do that. But that's basically. I mean, it's just pouring from the empty into the void, as G. Edgar Chief used to say.
Yeah, Whitley, you say it seems like there's a lot of. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, if you want to engage with them, it has to be serious. They're teachers. They're here to teach. You got a question that they're interested in helping you with, then they'll come. But if you don't, sitting there trying to just get them to come so I can see them.
That would be me.
Just so I can take a picture. It seems like you
taking pictures.
Yeah, they don't go for that.
Low light camera. We did not get a thing on it. We sent it to a lab, and they went through it layer by layer, the videotape, which has got a lot of different layers in it. They didn't find anything on it. I have a surveillance system in this apartment. You know how I know the visitors have come here? Because it turns itself off.
Yeah.
There is no programming in it to enable it to do that. But it will do it every time.
Wow.
So, if I know there must be something that could be seen. It drives me crazy.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just get one picture or something and feel vindicated,
Yes, one picture in all
one.
these years.
Just once.
Picture would be so nice.
I would love that. It seems like you have a lot of these sort of synchronicities in your life. You're like this, even this picture one of my favorite topics is synchronicity itself. What are your thoughts on synchronicities?
I think that it's the way the world actually works. Annie always said that if there are synchronicities in your life, look at them closely because they mean you're on your soul's plan. And that's what she was saying was you've started out with a plan. And when you come to these points of intersection that you set up before you were even born, then you're still on your plan.
Wow. I love hearing that. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. That's great. She nailed it. I mean,
yeah, she knew this stuff very well.
Well, I want to ask you this because time is running out, and I just want to know from all the experiences that you have gone through, you know, with your losing your wife and the experiences after her death, abducted by aliens. What is your overall take of all your experiences you've had?
I've lived a life in a different way. I've lived by rules that we don't usually have. And I think that one of the visitors called me the luckiest of the lucky. And I think that's accurate. It's not easy. They're not here to coddle anybody. And they will beat you up if you're not careful. And they are dangerous. But this is the most beautiful, provocative, and powerful experience I can possibly imagine having.
Wow.
I live in another world now, in a little apartment, all by myself, with my wife and a number of friends, none of whom I can see.
Wow. Beautiful. And this is for our listeners and the people on this planet. What messages have the visitors given you overall? I believe they've said that they have said about saving the planets. Is there something that they've giving you to give us to help us get on the right track, or are we just screwed?
I had a big fight with them back in a year ago, February, where they demonstrated to me. We're running close on time, so I won't go into too much detail. Suffice to say, there was a physical component of it. I got scratched up, and because in the physical level, the ones I've been with lately have these little claws in their suffice to say, anyway, we had a fight. And the fight was over the idea that they've got to show themselves in order to empower their message. Because we close encounter witnesses, many of whom have this terrifying message about what's happening to our planet that is being borne out by everything that's happening around us. We can't do it. We gotta break through a death wish, and we gotta break through fear and indifference and all kinds of things. We need them to just give us a few minutes of their presence so that we can then carry this message saying this is their message. Now, the fight, of course, at the end of the fight, I thought, shut. I hope I'm not offending people by using ordinary language when I do that. So they're not going to help us. There began then a process of communication that is about a new book, which I have just about finished, that they are working on with me directly. And it is no handbook. It's not like, hey, a how-to book on communicating with the visitors. It is a deep, complex book about a new way of being alive in relationship to the real world around us. And when we can do that and learn to do that well, we will be able to communicate with them in such a way that it doesn't become this dopey thing of, hey, man, what kind of cell phones do you guys have on your planet? We got to do better than that. So, yes, there is something coming, and it will be soon, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Let me put it that way.
Well, I wish we had another hour and a half or another
know,
4.5 hours or another 6 hours. I just think it's fascinating. I feel it's a shame that you had to go through this and had a lot of ridicule from your original story, because look how many more millions of people claim abduction experiences that echo yours, Whitley. So I think you should feel reassured that you're not alone at all in this, because they're
I'm not alone, and there's a lot of great people out there too, because the visitors chose their people very well. They knew what they were doing.
We're going to have
And,
5,000 of them out at Contact in the Desert coming up, and Mr. Strieber will be there. So if you want to see him,
that's right. Contact.
you get to see him there. You're going to have a lecture, a workshop, and a panel.
I am. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
The other important thing is to go to Whitley's site, Unknown Country. It's a great source of information. You can listen to his podcast, Dreamland. And anything else they should know about, Whitley?
Anything else they should know about? Let's hope that this works, because it's probably our last shot. If we can get into direct communication with them as a species, and people know that, then their message is going to be heard. Our message is going to be heard, and things will change on this planet. If not, we're going to go through the full experience of the collapse of the environment and the ecosystem, and all of the trouble and suffering and problems that go with that.
It scares the hell out of me. Whitley, don't stop working. We need you out there, and it's really great to be able to read your stuff and see what's going on. We really appreciate all the work you've published and put out there for all of us.
Appreciate
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. People in the chat room, thank you so much. And we know that you are a big fan, like us, of Whitley, and please support him. Go to Contact in the Desert this coming May and June, May 31st through June 3rd. You can see all of us.
You can hear Whitley Strieber.
Yes,
I mean, my God, get in the car.
I mean, you might if you right.
Telling you,
it's worth it. It's worth it. But would love to see you guys out there. So until then, we have more Contact in the Desert speakers and authors coming on our show from now until
until Contact. Yeah,
until the day of. So. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Tony Sweet, Captain Ron for Truth Be Told. Subscribe, share, and we hope to see you next time right here on Truth Be Told. Take care.